granniopteryx, granniopteryx. She knows the truth, she's linking every link.
Hello. So, at the moment, there is a bit of a flurry surrounding Nigel Farage, which Labour has exposed. And they've been talking about nothing else ever since. I'll get back to that in a minute. Anyway, as you know, Labour is ever ready to root out any sort of corruption or underhand politics. They're such straight guys, aren't they? They are absolutely certain to expose all sorts of dreadful things, from not accepting personal gifts from billionaires to not covering up the presence of rape gangs in their council areas. Wait. Well, moving swiftly on, the Labour Party has uncovered tremendous wrongdoing in connection with Nigel Farage, and they've been talking about his financial sins non-stop ever since an unprepared recent MP, for whom a by-election was called to get him into office, this chap called Andy Burnham, was parachuted in from Lancashire to take the place of Sir Keir Starmer, who has resigned under something of a cloud. And he was parachuted in because there wasn't one single sitting MP in the whole of the 403 strong parliamentary party who was considered intelligent enough to step into number 10 without tripping up over the doorstep. I mean, David Lammy, the Deputy Prime Minister, why didn't he just slide into place? Right, so that aside, why did Farage resign, and what was the fuss about the £5 million that the Labour Party have been banging on about? And what did Farage do to cause such a moral upheaval? You have to remember, Nigel Farage was never an MP before 2024. Since 1994, he had run for UKIP, the United Kingdom Independence Party, in no less than 7 elections, and he lost in all of them. However, he was elected to the European Parliament in 1999 and remained there for UKIP and then for the Brexit Party until 2020, when the British presence in the European Parliament was wound up. Yay, sort of. After that, he may have been involved in politics in a social and administrative way, but he wasn't an MP right up until Rishi Sunak in May 2024 called a snap election for that coming July. If you're not au fait with British politics, you can call an election for 6 weeks' time. It's not a long drawn-out affair at all. Now, well before that announcement by Rishi Sunak, Farage had accepted a gift of £5 million from a multimillionaire called Christopher Harborne. He's more than a multimillionaire. He's a crypto billionaire and a long-time supporter of the Reform Party. Harborne described the money as a thank you for Farage's many years of steadfast Brexit campaigning. Harborne had very strong principles about Brexit, and the money was mostly intended to fund Farage's personal security, because even as a private citizen, which he was, remember, even as a private citizen, there were nutcases around who hadn't forgiven him for his role in the Brexit movement. And this is a serious matter. Some of you might remember the murder of Jo Cox, a sitting MP for the Labour Party. She was killed by a nutcase who hadn't forgiven her for supporting the Remain movement. And Farage was is and has been far more high profile than Joe Cox, and far stronger in his principles about Brexit. And over the years, there have been incidents when things were thrown at Farage. On one occasion it was a milkshake, and on another occasion it was concrete, a block of concrete or a bucket of concrete, something like that. That's potentially lethal. He was in an open-top bus at the time. Somebody pitched this concrete at him. So his personal security is actually a consideration. And that's what Harborne was giving him the money for, because any sort of security is very expensive. And this was intended to fund his security for years. So Mr. Harborne's donation in that context, at least, well, it makes sense. And remember, Farage is quite a good friend of Donald Trump, and we all know the attempts on Donald Trump's life as well. So altogether, anyone in that position has to worry about that sort of thing. So the donation was in April 2024. And any election was considered to be months, if not years, away. The Conservatives were certainly in trouble. And a lot of people thought, well, maybe November there might be an election, but nobody was sure. And it was a great surprise, not to say a shock, to almost everyone, including people in the Conservative Party, when towards the end of May in 2024, Rishi Sunak called a sudden general election for July of that year. Everybody thought he was mad, and it turns out he was. Well, at least mad to make that sort of a judgment. So suddenly, a couple of months after Farage had received this gift from Harborne, there was an election. But he wasn't an MP. He was just moving and shaking in the newly formed Reform Party. Now, MPs are supposed to declare any gift they might have received that's got a worth of over £300. And most of you will have worked out that £5 million is somewhat in excess of 300. And horror of horrors, Farage didn't declare it. But then he wasn't an MP when he got that money. And after he'd got it, it was his money. Harborne and Farage have both described it as an unconditional personal gift. Now, it certainly wasn't at that time a formal party donation, and neither of those two men knew that there was going to be an election 2 months later. 2 months later? 3 months later. Harborne was and is a staunch Brexiteer, and said he wanted to reward Farage for his Brexit work and the fact he was still sticking to his guns. He also said that he expected nothing in return. I don't know whether he did or he didn't. But the fact is, he gave the money when Farage was not an MP and before an election was even in prospect. And legally, that money was therefore private funds exchanged between private people. So really, there shouldn't be a problem here. The timing wasn't his. If he'd got it during the election time, when technically he still wasn't an MP, but he was on the way there, yes, I'd have expected him to tell everyone about it, or the ethics committee or whatever. But he got the money when there was no prospect of an election. So let's look at it this way. Did he take money from party funds? No. Did he take money intended for clandestine political use? No. Did he take money that had been collected from trusting little old ladies who thought they were contributing to a political movement? To buy himself a camper van or something? No. Was that money his own personal property? Yes. So there shouldn't have been a problem about it. It was fortuitous, and I'm quite sure that Harborne and Farage are very good friends, and that happens a lot in politics. Powerful men and politicians meet, and there's Starmer's relationship with Lord Ali. Now, he got gifts from him when he was actually in office. So this does happen, but it was a private transaction between two men who at the time were just colleagues and friends. And the Labour Party is trying to make a big thing of it. And unless I've missed something, I can't see what they think they're doing. Well, apart from the fact that £5 million sounds like a lot of money. They're clutching their pearls over their swelling bosoms in an orgy of outrage. An orgy of outrage that would compare in towering umbrage with Margot Dumont rising to a Groucho Marx insult. I also suspect that they are most indignant about the clever way Farage has outmanoeuvred them, because what he did was he resigned his seat and he's going to run again to get a public declaration of confidence in him. So instead of fending off, swatting away the flies of accusations of getting money for some nefarious way, he'll be running an election campaign. And this has really, as I said, outmanoeuvred the Labour Party. It's much more than any Labour MP could manage. They are pretty low on imagination, those guys. And there is a bonus to that, because at present, while he's not an MP, the parliamentary standards investigation, which Labour called, has to be suspended because he's not an MP while he's standing for election. So that deals with that as well. He really has been most politically astute. For sure, the investigation will restart if and when he's re-elected, but by that time Farage will most likely have had a resounding mandate from his constituents, and all the Labour snarling in the world is nothing but ridiculous if the snarling exposes a mouthful of gums and no teeth. As for the Clacton election, Labour say Farage's resignation and restand is a publicity stunt. And it's solely because of that they're not putting up a candidate to fight the seat against him. Now, since the Labour Party is a group of honourable men and women and people of undefined gender, obviously their lack of enthusiasm for scrapping over the Clacton seat has nothing to do with the prospect of a Labour candidate actually forfeiting his deposit. For those of you unfamiliar with the British voting system, in order to discourage completely frivolous entries, candidates have to put up a nominal sum to enter an election. At present, I think it's £500. The deposit is returned if the candidate gets more than 5% of the vote. And it's considered a hideous embarrassment for candidates to poll so low that they don't get their deposit back. Now, there are some single issue candidates, like the monster raving loony party, that sort of thing. They're accustomed to losing their deposit, but they're just doing it for the fun. I do hope Count Binface is going to be Farage's opponent, and I do hope he doesn't lose his deposit. But if he does, it's not an embarrassment, because we all know, that's not a standing political party. But if the Labour Party lost their deposit, that would be a real exposure of Labour's current state in the minds of the people. And I'm quite sure that threat would loom large over any candidate running for Labour in Clacton. A Labour candidate wouldn't stand a chance. So, and they say they're not going to run against Farage. And the Conservatives too aren't going to run. They know it's a pointless exercise. So if you see stories about Nigel Farage and £5 million, which the Labour Party are bigging up as if it's some sort of a bribe, at the moment there is absolutely nothing that any legal position has against Farage. Nothing at all. But the Labour Party keep on harping on that because, well, they're a party that parachuted in a complete stranger to replace their Prime Minister, who's been embroiled in side dealings since the beginning of his office. Yeah, right. Till next time. You can help my channel by subscribing and clicking the notification bell. That's quite important. And by sharing if you're so inclined. Links to my other channels and to donation methods are in the description. But the best way you can help is simply by clicking like and notify. Thank you.